howdy, folks, and welcome to the Deep Dive.
Howdy.
Now, being Tennesseans, there are a few things we hold kind of sacred, ain't there?
Like our independence.
Exactly. Our independence, the right to make our own choices, and just, well, generally not having folks tell us what we can and can't do unless there's a darn good reason.
I am man to that.
And lately, I've been asking about these new rules hitting hemp-derived cannabinoid products. You know, the stuff from House Bill 1376 and Senate Bill 1413.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk.
It seems like they're fixing to regulate just about everything connected to them. So our mission today really is to cut through all that legal talk.
Get down to brass tacks.
That's right. Figure out what these new laws really mean for us freedom-loving folks right here in Tennessee. We've been poring over the actual bills, the briefing docs, trying to get a clear picture.
Yeah, trying to make sense of it all.
So let's dive on in, shall we?
Let's do it. So what's interesting, I think, is how the state is basically starting fresh, with how it handles these hemp products.
Starting fresh? How so?
Well, these bills, they carve out a whole new section in the Tennessee Code, Title 57, Chapter 7, specifically just for these hemp-derived cannabinoid products.
Okay, whole new chapter.
Right. And the state's intention, it's written right there in the bill, pretty firm. Manufacture, sale, and distribution is strictly prohibited unless specifically provided for.
Whoa. Strictly prohibited unless they say so. That sounds like control.
It's definitely a clear move towards tighter state control, no doubt about
It's
it.
in control, huh? Seems like that's the name of the game these days. Now, why this big shift, you reckon? What's the state saying is the reason for all these new rules?
Well, they put forward a few main points. Top of the list is public health and safety.
Okay, safety. That's usually the first thing they mention.
Yeah. They emphasize needing to make sure folks buying these products are, of age and that they don't get into the wrong hands, especially kids.
Right, age verification.
Then there's the issue of enforcement, because some of these hemp-derived things can have, well, what the state calls intoxicating effects.
Intoxicating, okay.
Right. So the state wants a more, let's say, structured way to manage them, more oversight.
Intoxicating. Now, that brings up something important. When we talk about hemp-derived cannabinoids, what exactly are we talking about here? It gets confusing.
It really can.
Yeah.
The definition in the bill is pretty specific. Generally, it's cannabinoids other than the usual delta-9 THC.
The main one people know.
Exactly. Cannabinoids other than that, they come from hemp and are above a really low concentration, 0.1%.
Okay, 0.1%.
And it also covers hemp products that have just a tiny bit of delta-9 THC, but no more than 0.3% based on the dry weight.
That 0.3% number sounds familiar from the Farm Bill.
It is. Same threshold.
Yeah.
And these compounds, they interact with the same systems in your body as, traditional cannabis. They often produce psychoactive effects, though sometimes maybe milder.
Okay, so give us some examples of these fellows. What are some of the names we might have seen around the stores?
Sure. Think of delta-8 or delta-10 THC. HHC is another one. THCP, THCV. The bill actually lists these as being included.
Delta-8, delta-10, HHC.
Yep.
Okay, those are the ones getting the new rule.
Those are definitely covered, yeah. Was you're likely seeing around.
All right, so that's what's in. Now, what about what's out? I know a lot of folks use CBD for various reasons. Where does that stand?
That's a really crucial distinction. The bill specifically excludes several things from this new framework. CBD is out.
Good to know.
CBG and CBN are also excluded. And even things like hemp fiber, grain, topical stuff you put on your skin, they aren't included in this set of rules.
Okay.
Also, THCA, that's the precursor to THC, the raw form, that's not part of this definition either. And no synthetic cannabinoids.
No synthetics, got it.
And here's an interesting little detail. If something became a Schedule I controlled substance after July 1st, 2023, it's also excluded, even if it might otherwise fit the general idea.
Huh. That's specific. So it's a pretty targeted list then. Now, if a product contains these hemp-derived cannabinoids, what exactly does that make it legally?
Right, so that's where the term hemp-derived cannabinoid product, or HDCP, comes in.
HDCP, yeah.
It's basically anything meant to be, eaten, inhaled, or absorbed through the skin that contains these specific cannabinoids we just talked about.
Eaten, inhaled, absorbed, pretty much covers everything.
It does, and this definition is broad enough to even include, like, raw hemp flower, those harvested buds you might see for sale.
Even the flower itself. Okay, so we've got a handle on what we're talking about. Now, it sounds like if you're involved in the business of these HDCPs, you're going to need the state's permission. Who needs a license?
Pretty much everyone in the supply chain, really.
Yeah.
If you're making these products, the suppliers, you need a license.
Okay, the makers.
If you're distributing them to the stores, the wholesalers, you need one too.
The middlemen?
Yep. And if you're selling them directly to folks like us, the retailers, you absolutely need a license.
So, makers, distributors, sellers, all three.
All three levels, yeah. They're now subject to licensing by the Alcoholic Beverage Commission, the ABC.
The ABC. Huh. They handle the liquor and beer. Now this too.
That's the move. And it kind of signals, treating these products maybe more like alcohol could lead to fewer, maybe more established players in the market eventually.
Interesting. Seems like they're spreading their wings. So what kind of hoops do these businesses have to jump through to get one of these ABC licenses?
Well, there are different license types, right? Supplier, wholesaler, retailer. Each has its own requirements.
Makes sense.
There are application fees and then annual fees. For a retailer, it's $1,000 per location every year.
$1,000 a year per store. Okay.
Suppliers pay more, $2,500 per location. And wholesalers, they're looking at $5,000 per warehouse.
$5,000 for the warehouse, guys. Whew. What else?
Everyone applying has to go through criminal background checks. Specifically, no drug-related felonies in the last 10 years.
No drug felonies for 10 years. All right.
And importantly, just by applying, businesses are also agreeing to let the ABC come in and do inspections.
Background checks and inspections? Sounds like they're not messing around.
Seems that way.
Was there anything else that stood out about who can get a retail license, especially about where they can set up shop?
Yeah, actually, there's a particularly interesting, maybe tough hurdle for new retail spots.
Oh, yeah.
If a business wants to open a new place within 1,000 feet of a K-12 school and sell these products.
1,000 feet, like 3 football fields.
Right. They'll have to prove they were already selling these products at that exact location way back on December 31st, 2023.
Last year. So if you weren't already there near a school, you can't just open up now.
Seems like it's going to be very difficult, yeah. It really limits where new shops focused on these products might pop up, especially near schools.
That's a pretty specific date to remember. All right, so say a business jumps through the hoops, gets their license. What are the rules for actually selling and buying these HDCPs? What do folks need to know?
The age limit is a big one.
Yeah.
Strict. 21 years or older to purchase.
21, like alcohol and tobacco.
Exactly. And you'll need to show a valid ID, no question. Selling to someone under 21 or even, an adult buying for someone underage, that's now a Class A misdemeanor.
Class A. That's serious business in Tennessee.
It carries significant penalties, yeah. And both the ABC and local police have the power to enforce these age rules.
No doubt about that. So you got to be of age. What about where you can buy these things? Can you just find them anywhere now?
Not anymore, really. The law puts limits on where HDCPs can be sold. It's mostly going to be places that are to restrict entry to people 21 and over.
Like bars, or maybe those dedicated vape or smoke shops.
Exactly. Or places that have liquor licenses. Your typical liquor stores, licensed retail package stores, they can sell them too.
Okay.
There are some specific conditions for places that might hold, like all 3 licenses, supplier, wholesaler, retailer at one spot. But generally, you probably won't find these next to the candy bars at the gas station anymore.
Right, figured as much. What about how they're displayed in these places? Can you just walk up, grab what you want?
Usually not. There's a barrier rule. In most retail stores, these products have to be kept behind the counter.
Behind the counter, so you got to ask for them.
Yep. Ask an employee to get it for you. Now, there is an exception for some hemp-derived cannabinoid beverages in package stores.
Ah, the drinks again.
Yeah, but only if they come in containers of 12 fluid ounces or more. Then they might be out, but generally behind the counter.
Interesting little exception for the bigger drinks. What about when you actually go to pay? Can you just zip through self-checkout?
Nope. Self-checkout and vending machines are specifically banned for selling these HDCPs.
No self-checkout, no vending machines.
Correct. It has to be a direct sale with a store employee, mainly to make sure that age verification happens properly.
Okay, so no skipping the line or the ID check. Now, here's one I know folks are wondering about. What if I see something online, maybe from a company out of state? Can they just mail it right to my doorstep here in Tennessee like they used to?
Ah, that's a huge change. And probably not one folks who liked ordering online will be happy about.
I'm guessing not.
Direct-to-consumer shipping and delivery of these products.
Yeah.
It is now completely illegal under this new law.
Completely illegal. Wow.
Yeah. And there are hefty fines if you try to get around it. This could really impact access, especially for folks in rural parts of Tennessee who relied on mail order.
Well, that's definitely going to put a damper on some folks' routines.
Yeah.
A big change indeed. Okay, now, with all these different products out there, and some being okay and some not, how are they making sure they're safe? And that folks know what they're actually getting?
Good question. There are now mandatory testing requirements. It's a big part of the new system.
Mandatory testing, okay.
Before any HDCP can even be made into a final product, the hemp material has to undergo a full panel test. That identifies all the active cannabinoids present.
So they know what they're starting with.
Exactly. And then the final product, the thing you buy, have to have a potency test to make absolutely sure the amount of each cannabinoid matches what's on the label.
And who does this testing? The companies themselves.
No, that's key. These tests have to be done by independent third-party laboratories that have been approved by the ABC.
Independent labs. Approved by the ABC. That adds a layer of trust, I suppose.
That's the idea. The suppliers, the folks making the stuff, they're responsible for arranging and paying for this testing. And they have to certify their products meet all the rules.
Oh, okay.
Plus, the ABC is going to set the specific standards for the tests, what qualifies a lab, and they'll keep a public list of approved labs. They'll also be doing their own random checks, pulling products off shelves to test them.
Random checks, too. Sounds like they're trying to hold folks accountable. What about the packaging itself? What kind of information will we see on these products now?
The labeling requirements are pretty detailed. You got to have a full list of ingredients, any potential allergens like nuts or soy.
Standard stuff.
Right. A nutritional fact panel like on food, and then very clear warning statements.
Warnings like what?
Things like may have intoxicating effects or keep away from children. Stuff like that has to be prominent.
Makes sense.
The label also has to state the exact amount of each hemp-derived cannabinoid in milligrams, both per serving and the total amount in the whole package.
Milligrams per serving in total.
Also, the net weight and a QR code.
A QR code, what's that for?
That code has to link you to a website with specific info about that product. Batch the results of all that required testing, showing it passed, and the name of the independent lab that did the test.
So you can scan it and see the lab results. That's actually kind of useful.
It's meant to provide transparency, yeah.
And finally, every product needs a clearly marked expiration date.
Expiration date, good. All right, that's a good bit of information to keep an eye out for on the package. Now, you mentioned enforcement, the ABC needing funding. I reckon the state's going to be seeing some extra money coming in from all this. What's the deal with taxes?
You reckon right. There are 2 new taxes specifically for these products. First, there's a wholesale tax.
On the distributors again. Yep, paid by the wholesalers. It's calculated at 1 cent for every milligram of hemp-derived cannabinoid in the product.
1 cent per milligram. How much does that add up to?
It could be significant, depending on the product's potency. A product with 1,000 milligram total would have a $10 wholesale tax added right there. This tax is paid monthly.
Okay. And where does that wholesale tax money go?
It's split. Half of it goes to local governments, specifically earmarked for road projects.
The roads, okay.
And the other half goes straight to the ABC to help pay for all this new enforcement and regulation they're doing.
So a little something for the roads, a little something for keeping things in line. What about when you or I actually buy something at the store? Is there another tax tacked on at the register?
There is. On top of regular sales tax, there's a new 6% retail sales tax that applies specifically just to these hemp-derived cannabinoid products.
An extra 6% at retail.
Correct. And the money from that tax is split evenly between the Tennessee Department of Revenue and, again, the ABC.
All right, so it seems like the state is definitely looking to generate some revenue from this new regulatory structure. Helps pay for itself, I guess.
That seems to be part of the calculation, yes. Funding the enforcement mechanism.
Now, what about certain products that are just completely off limits now? You mentioned THCA earlier was excluded from the definition, but is it banned?
Yes, the rules clarify what's outright prohibited. It's now illegal to make or sell hemp itself if it contains more than 0.1% THCA on a dry weight basis.
So high THCA hemp flower is out.
Seems so. And any product that contains any amount of THCA added to it is also banned.
Any product with THCA.
Okay, additionally, any product where the total THC concentration, that means delta-9 THC plus THCA converted, exceeds that 0.3% dry weight limit is illegal.
The 0.3% total THC limit. Got it.
And like we said before, all synthetic cannabinoids are completely prohibited too.
So they're drawing some pretty clear lines in the sand about what's acceptable chemically and what's not. What about how these products are advertised? Any new restrictions there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A big focus is making sure marketing doesn't appeal to kids.
Right.
So no cartoons allowed in ads, no superheroes, No imagery that primarily targets folks under 21.
That makes good sense. Keep it away from the young'uns.
Right. Also, it's now illegal to mix these HTCPs with alcohol in a single product.
No cannabis cocktails, huh?
Not pre-mixed, no.
Yeah.
And advertisers cannot make any health claims about these products. No saying it cures anything or treats any condition.
No health claims. Okay.
And there are also specific limits being set on serving sizes for edibles and the total amount of cannabinoids allowed in a single edible package, trying to prevent accidental overconsumption.
Full minutes on edibles. Got it. Now, for us folks here in Tennessee, what do these new rules mean for our own personal choices, our responsibilities? Does this mean it's okay to use them anywhere now that they're legal-ish and regulated?
Not at all. That's something the law is very clear about. These new regulations do not give anyone the right to, say, drive a car or operate heavy machinery while impaired by these products.
Still got to be responsible.
Absolutely. Doing so can still be considered negligence, could lead to DUI charges, serious legal trouble. Same as always.
Okay. What about at work or on someone else's property?
Employers still have the right to prohibit the use of these products in their workplace. Your boss can still say no.
Employer rights are protected.
Yep, and private property owners. They can still restrict or ban the use of these products on their premises. So just because it's sold in stores doesn't mean you can use it anywhere you please.
Right. Property rights still apply.
Exactly. And these rules don't offer any protection if you get charged with an impairment-related offense, like a DUI, or if your employer requires drug testing. Failing a drug test because of these products is still failing a drug test.
So the responsibility still falls squarely on each of us to be sensible, know the rules where we are, and understand the consequences.
That sums it up pretty well. Personal responsibility remains key.
All right. We've covered a whole lot of ground here today. This is a big shift. Let's try to boil it down.
Yeah.
What are the key things folks should really take away from this deep dive?
I think the main thing, the big picture, is that Tennessee has put in place a very comprehensive, really significant new set of rules for these hemp-derived products.
Comprehensive is right.
It touches everything. Who can make and sell them? That's the licensing. How they can be sold, the age limits, the behind-the-counter rules, the standards products have to meet, testing, labeling, and, of course, how they're taxed.
Licensing, sales rules, testing, taxes, covers the whole life cycle.
Pretty much. And the state's stated primary goal, it's clearly focused on public safety and just establishing a controlled, regulated framework for this market that kind of exploded,
Right. Control and safety seem to be the watchwords. And for us freedom-loving Tennesseans, well, these new rules, they might feel like a bit of an infringement for some, maybe a step too far when it comes to personal liberty.
I could see how some folks would feel that way, definitely.
But like you said, the state says it's all in the name of public health and safety, keeping things orderly.
That's the stated intention, yes.
So I guess the question for all of us, as Tennesseans who cherish our independence, is, what do you reckon is the right balance here? As the state tries to navigate these new waters with hemp products, it's certainly something to mull over.
It absolutely raises important questions.
Yeah.
The balance between personal freedom, public safety, and the role of government regulation. It's a constant discussion.
It surely is. Amen to that. And on that note, we'll leave you all with a little food for thought. The Bible verse in Genesis 1:29-30 states that God gave every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it as food for humans. Amen.